So this will be in your Google Classroom in a little bit. I haven't thrown it up there because I just want you to focus here. So the new digital SAT. Essentially, I don't want to print that. What did I just do? Sorry. Definitely a moon. The moon is causing crazy things. All right, when is the digital SAT, PSAT coming? So right now, they've all begun. From now, this point forward, everything will be digital as far as those are concerned. So each assessment in the digital SAT suite has two sections with two modules. So there's a reading and writing section and a math section. So in the reading and writing section, there's two modules. In the math section, there's two modules. In the first of each of these modules, it contains a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. Then, when you get to the second module, it will be based on how you performed on the first module. So if you did not very well on the first module, they will have easier problems there. But if you did your best and did really well, you might see a little bit more hard or more difficult problems in the second module. So I don't want you to be shocked if you're like, you know, oh, this first module, this is great, I can do this, yada, yada, and then bam, right? It might be a little bit more difficult with the second module, which is good. You want the second module to be more difficult. That will show that you've done well. It is adaptive testing, but it's a little bit different than the NWEA adaptive testing, okay? So you have 64 minutes to complete the reading and writing section. That's 32 minutes per module. And then you'll have a 10-minute break. So I don't believe you'll be able to walk around and do whatever you want. I think you'll be able to go one or two at a time to use the restroom quietly and come back, because everyone in the area where you're testing is also going to be testing, but they'll kind of be on different times. So we don't want to be disruptive. You'll have 70 minutes to complete the math section. So you'll have 35 minutes for each module. And that is 2 hours and 24 minutes total. So just looking at the math, there is a total of 44 questions. Most, about 3/4, are multiple choice, and some require student-produced responses. So it's no longer broken into with and without calculator sections, and there's a built-in calculator, Desmos. So questions that test similar skills and knowledge grouped together and they're arranged from easiest to hardest. So shorter word problems, and they're still using math in context. So you'll want to work accordingly through those easier ones a little bit more quickly so that you have more time to spend on the later questions that will be more difficult. So linear equations in one variable, we've seen a lot of that. Remember, those are equations of lines. Linear equations in two variables, we've only seen a little bit of that. Linear functions. So we're going to look a little bit at functions and how they're really related. So sometimes we might see the function of x. So if sometimes it'll look like the f of x. Sometimes they put this in place of y. I don't know. It's a little bit weird. It's kind of like how we change from x's with multiplying to dots and parentheses. This is just another way that they might show that. Can you turn it off? Sorry, that was my YouTube video. All right. So what else do you need to know? Systems of two linear equations and two variables. So this is kind of what we'll be starting on after the SAT. We haven't seen much of that. Linear inequalities. So this is like what we are looking at linearly, but with less than, greater than, or equal than. And then there's some advanced math, equivalent expressions, nonlinear equations in one variable, and systems of equations in two variables, and then nonlinear functions. So you can kind of see how many of these questions are in each section. So here is a sample question. They're telling you that this is a graph of a function where y equals f of x. So essentially y just equals this function. But this is a linear line, right? Do you see where the y-intercept is? So typically the y-intercept shows a starting point or an initial value. So if we're thinking of that in that terms, we're trying to interpret the slope of the graph in this context. So if we're talking about the slope, we're talking about how much something each costs. We're not, this may be true, right? The video game system probably does start at $100. Sorry. But that has nothing to do with the slope. So if we're talking about the slope, we want to know how much it's going up by for each one, right? The slope is the same thing as a constant rate or a unit rate. Jackson, can you handle it or do you need to go? Because you've been nothing but disruptive this entire time. Can you stop? All right, so it looks like it's going up 25 every time it's going over 1. So our slope, if we're interpreting our slope, we would say each game costs $25. So another section has to do with problem solving and data analysis. So you need to understand ratios, rates, proportional relationships and units, percentages. So lots of rational numbers. So things that can be written as a fraction. And then some things having to do with graphs and probability. So this one's a little bit tricky. We've got percentage of a percentage. So in a group, it says 40% of the items are red. Of all the red items, 30% also have stripes. So it might be important to remember that when we say of, we're thinking of multiplication. So 30% of the 40% means we're multiplying those percents together. So I would probably say you'll want to turn those into a decimal, right? So if you're thinking decimal wise, you would say 0.4 times 0.3, and that will give you 0.12, and you would choose B. It wouldn't make sense for them to have more of a percentage. So C and D you should be able to rule out. And then if nothing, then you're guessing between A and B. So what would make the most sense? Can I get 10 anyway from 3 and 4? No. So use your best reasoning if you are not understanding how to do the problem exactly. That would be okay. Area and volume, lines, angles, and triangles, and right triangle trigonometry. Oh, so here is really what you're looking at. Line, area, and volume. Lines, angles, and triangles, including right triangles. So 2 nearby trees are perpendicular to the ground, which is flat. One of the trees is 10 feet tall and has a shadow that is 5 feet long. So a lot of these you might want to draw a picture. You will have scratch paper. So if you have a 10-foot tree, you know that this is 10 feet. If the shadow is 5 feet long, you know that this is 5 feet. At the same time, the shadow of the other tree is 2 feet long. So how tall is the other tree? So if this is 2, good. These are good. See, you'll be good. These are proportional things, right? So how do I get from 5 to 10? You multiplied it by 2. So a lot of you just said 4. All right. I need to switch here. Ugh, okay, here we go. Maybe. So some resources. You will be logging into this app. Hopefully you've done some logging in. Tomorrow we will look a little bit at practice tests in the app if we have some time. Oh, yes. So what happens is there are practice tests, but they don't necessarily want you to utilize them now, because if you utilize them now, you won't be able to in high school. You have like 4 in your lifetime, essentially. So 4 for however, for your College Board account. So once you take them, they can't be undone. So they really do want you to wait until you get into high school to use these. So it says College Board recommends completing these closer to testing in junior year. So like your freshman and sophomore year, you'll want to be practicing those things. There are some tools that will help you. You can mark and flag questions for review. There is a clock counting down, but if that makes you anxious, I would definitely recommend hiding the timer. And you can get an alert when 5 minutes remain in each of the modules. There's a built-in graphing calculator, and you can also use the scientific calculator as well. You'll have access to a list of common formulas. You can highlight any part of a question and leave yourself a note to come back to you. So even though you can come back within the test module, once you get into like the second math module, you can't go back and edit something in the first module. All right, so Khan Academy has some good practice if you choose to use it. So today, as your assignment, bless you, let me get out of here. We are going to go through Bloom Learning. So you can log into Bloom Learning, just go to bloomlearning.com and we'll walk through some of these decks or cards in the deck, I should say, because we're not going to go through the whole deck. But you should see this one towards the top of your thing. So today is order of operations here. Remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We have to remember that order as we are solving them. So if you have your thing that you show work, it says copy the problem from your screen, oops, and include the answers. Show your work and include the answer. So remember, you're turning in this sheet, and then you're going to also mark it as done in Google Classroom so I know when you're done. I usually go through it the next day, everyone's, but if you don't have it done on time, then you'll have to mark it as done. So I would write 8 plus 4 times 5, and then I would follow the order of operations. So I would say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I don't have parentheses or exponents, but I do have multiplication, so that's what I would do first. 4 times 5 is 20. I would bring down the rest of the problem. 8 plus 20 is 28, right? So then I would definitely check my answer in Bloom Learning to be sure I was heading in the right direction. This next one is much more difficult, right? 8 plus 6 to the second power minus the quantity of 7 plus 4. So if we're looking at this, we have to look at our parentheses first. So I'm going to say 7 plus 4 is 11, and then I'm going to bring down the rest of the problem. Right? And then I have to do my exponents. Remember, this is not 6 times 2. It's 2 factors of 6. 2 factors of 6 looks like this, 6 times 6. So this is 36 minus 11. So now I'm at addition and subtraction from left to right. 8 plus 36 is 44. 44 minus 11 is equal to 33. So I would check that in my card here. And then I would keep going. So here I would write down 20 divided by 2 plus 5 times 3. So I have to multiply and divide from left to right because I don't have parentheses or exponents. So I would say 20 divided by 2 and 5 times 3 over here. So I have a 10. I bring down my plus. 5 times 3 is 15. Now I just add them up, right? So let me know if you're running into some trickier ones, but I think they're pretty straightforward. Make sure you're finding the exponent first with this one, then multiplying by 3, then subtracting 14 from that, right? So if we just walk through a few more of these, you would divide, then you would multiply, then you would divide. Left to right when we are at multiplication and division, and left to right when we're at addition and subtraction. Here, be sure you divide first. So this becomes 6 minus 2 plus 5. Then you would work from left to right. 6 minus 2 is 4, plus 5 makes 9. So be sure you know your order of operations well. Be sure you divide here, so that becomes 10. You have 44 minus 10 plus 13, then you're working left to right. So you're showing your work. I know some of this is basic. I know you can do it in your head, but I want you to practice showing your work step by step. So this page should be filled. Once it's filled, you should be done with the cards. What else? Don't forget about Alex. I haven't thrown those grades in there yet this morning, but I will be doing that. And then anything else that's missing from last week that you haven't completed, make sure you're getting that done as well. Tomorrow we will look a little bit at the Desmos calculator and have some time to complete any missing assignments tomorrow. All right. Questions, concerns, don't hesitate to ask. Make sure you're showing your work. Make sure your name's on it. Make sure you get it turned in.